Hello, art teacher with you here again, and this is going to be part 3 of the 3-part value series. I hope you watch part 1 and 2 because this one's not going to make a lot of sense unless you watch those. You have to make the value scale and draw a sphere with the shadows on it. Anyway, I've got my cowboy hat on and I'm ready to roll. Matter of fact, I think I'll take that off. And go ahead and do subscriptions and likes and leave some comments if you have a question. You know, all the regular YouTube stuff that we talk about here. And what I want to do today is take my value lesson to the next level where we're going to use several shapes and then put shadows on them to turn them from shapes into forms so that they become solid three-dimensional forms with mass and they look solid. And that's what you can do with the shadows. So that's going to be taking it to the next level. And then for those who are really into this, I have a book recommendation that's really going to take it to the next level for them. So if I have some really advanced students. Now, you know, I've been using a number 2 pencil, which is a standard pencil everybody uses with the eraser on the bottom. A decent little drawing tool, but more designed for writing. Today, with these that I've drawn, I've used more of a drawing pencil, a 4B. That's on the darker side, so you can explore different quality art materials as far as pencils go. And be sure to get a great big pack of paper like this. They're between $5 to $10, so it's like 1 cent to 2 cents per sheet. And if your son or daughter is doing art, you're going to need a lot of sketch paper around just to get those practice. And you know, if you draw every day, you get really good. If you draw an hour a day, you can become a monster. You can become very, very good. If you do meaningful art activities for an hour a day, centered around drawing, you will get good. You'll be a professional illustrator, maybe. Anyway, let's go ahead and look at a little bit of what I've been doing. So I went ahead and drew up many things ahead of time, and these are going to help you to orient yourself on this. So let's just jump right into it. What I have here is a cylinder, and I have the oval on top, and as far down as it curves here, it needs to curve there. That's going to take some practice if you hadn't done it before. Spend some time on it, get good at drawing the cylinders. You might even put an old soup can right there on the table and have your son or daughter draw it a few times just to get the feel for it. Anyway, draw your cylinder, draw a line behind it like this. That's overlapping, right? Then have maybe a little arrow showing where the light's coming from. Then draw your cast shadow coming off it. That's the shadow, remember, that is on the table. Same thing applies to the cone. You're going to want to do a cone the same way, and you'll see I have the same idea down here where it curves down. Now you're looking down at the cone. You're looking down at it and it's on a table. So that means this will curve downward like that. And of course the line goes behind it for the table and the cast shadow comes off of it. So do a cone, a cylinder, and the last one being, of course, a cube. And it's the same principle. You have to think it out, make sure all these lines are parallel to each other, 1, 2, 3. And then these lines, 1, 2, 3, are parallel to each other. And these 3 lines are parallel to each other. Then make a line going behind it, that's the table. And the cast shadow is going to be important also. So those are just quick examples that I drew up of a cone, a cube, and a cylinder. But also you need to do a sphere as part of your little still life drawing, which you're going to construct here. So when you do your cylinder, since I did that one first, I'll talk about it first here. When you do your cylinder, you're going to use the same ideas as always. Core of the shadow, which is the darkest part, graduated tone, or it goes lightly into a highlight, which is called a graduated tone. Ambient shadow behind the highlight, then from core of the shadow into reflected light. Then here's probably the most important part, at least to me the part I think looks best. Reflected light contrasts with the inside of the core of the shadow. There's a contrast there between this and this, with the cast shadow being the darker part. Now that creates an edge. See over here, this is a line. An edge, you're going to want to have edges also. So an edge is where one value meets a different value, and it creates that contrast here, and that's an edge. It's nice to have edges included in your drawing, not just lines, especially when you're using value like this. Also with color though. Here I have a cone. Be sure to get this to curve down the right way. And I have the highlight, core of the shadow, reflected light, and cast shadow. Same thing here. I have the contrast between reflected light and cast shadow. Then the cast shadow diffuses out onto the table. And I have an ambient shadow here, which creates an edge between the highlight and the background. And again, you're going to want to go for an edge instead of a line on that. And the last one I have here is a cube. Here I have highlight up on this side. This one goes from highlight down into a graduated tone, core of the shadow down into reflected light. Then that beautiful contrast between reflected light and cast shadow. Then the cast shadow diffuses outward. So that's a lot to do already. You got 3 major drawings that your students should do. So you're just going to get paper, have them take the pencil, draw the cone out. It's not that difficult, but when you're just getting used to it, the hardest part of the cone is that curve at the bottom, right? So you're going to have to practice that a few times, get a feel for it. So they will draw their cone out and then put the shadows on it. That'll be drawing 1. Draw the cube out, put the shadows on it. That's drawing 2. Draw the cylinder out, put the shadows on it. And that's drawing 3. And those are just sketches to prepare themselves. Then let's go ahead and do something like this, and this is what we've been building up to. So you have all 4 of those shapes, and you're going to add the shadows to them to turn them from shapes into forms. Now you're going to have to figure out where the light is coming from, and I'm going to have it coming in from this direction. You know, a good artist to look at for light and shadow is a guy named Caravaggio. So just Google the name Caravaggio. It's easy to do. And there's even a good Wikipedia article on his life. And he had just a fascinating life filled with adventure and craziness. So look up Caravaggio, who was the great painter of chiaroscuro, which is that contrast of light and dark. So Caravaggio's good with that. And he's the master. He's the good guy at that. Anyway, what I have here is pretty important because it's kind of the triangle composition. We can talk more about composition later, but by composition I just mean the arrangement, the visual arrangement, right? So I have it come up to a triangle, down, here's the base of the triangle. You might want to do that when you make yours. And here I have the cone, sphere, cylinder, and the cube. And what I would do is start with the first one, which would be the sphere. Kind of get a little core of the shadow on that sphere, which, remember, that's the darkest part. And that's right in the middle. And remember, the most important part of that is make sure it curves around the form. And that's going to give the form a nice 3D look. Don't just make it go straight across. You know, sometimes students like to do that, and you just have to tell them, oh, gotta start again. We're going to do this the right way and create good habits of drawing. So definitely do not start off with you doing shadows that don't show form. You've got to be sure you have a core of the shadow, And that core of the shadow needs to articulate the form of the object. Now I'm doing this very quickly. I would hope your student goes a little slower and more carefully, but this gives you the idea. Okay, now I'm going, see it's got a core of the shadow, reflected light. Now I'm going to do the cast shadow. And remember, the cast shadow has to be darker than the reflected light. That's going to be super important. So there's a cast shadow, but look, part of the cast shadow goes behind the cylinder. So it stops at the edge of the cylinder, but I got this little line right here, so that some of that shadow goes right up onto the highlight of that cylinder. That's going to make an interesting addition to the drawing, okay? So then I'm going to make the cast shadow contrast. So there's a little contrast between here and here. It creates an edge instead of a line. That's nice to do. It gives it a nice look. Then I have, this is the cast shadow from the sphere. You can add little things like that. They're fun. That's little fun stuff to do. Now I'm going to make sure that the cylinder's core, the core of the shadow on the cylinder, is going to provide a really nice contrast with the highlight on the cube. And you know, I meant to do this video a little faster, but I think it's this is valuable enough information where I can take some time on this one. Anyway, here I have the core of the shadow on the cylinder going into the highlight, and on the other side going into the reflected light concept. And again, your student should go a little slower and more carefully. I'm kind of doing that faster. But what I've done is create a core of the shadow, reflected light, and highlight on that cylinder. And that's going to provide a nice contrast and create an edge between the highlight of the cube and the shadows on the cylinder. So those edges are nice. Try to find some way to put something behind the highlight that will create that edge contrast. It's always going to be good to do. Now a little shadow on the, oh yeah, I'll do my shadow on my cone. It's like an upside down ice cream cone, or like a birthday hat or something. Think of it that way if you want to. And so the core of the shadow is the darkest part. It's toward the middle. And now I'm going up gently into a highlight, and now an ambient shadow behind that highlight, just to emphasize that it's an edge and not a line. There we go, and now that's going to go into the reflected light. And what's going to provide a nice contrast between, so I've got a lot going on here. What I have here is the highlight of the cylinder with a contrast between the reflected light of the cone. That's a nice contrast, and it creates an edge instead of a line. Boom, boom. Then this provides this shadow which goes up onto the cylinder. See this shadow from the sphere? That provides a contrast between the table and this cylinder, and that's going to create an edge instead of a line also. Then you can do this and fill in the, you can do the, after that you would do what's called the cube and the other shadows on the table, which are called cast shadows, and finish that out. So, quick review. Number one, I would like you to practice cube, cylinder, and cone. Get to where you can just draw them. You know, draw them and be comfortable with drawing them. Then, I'd like you to go ahead and put the highlight, cast shadow, reflected light, and core of the shadow. Get all those shadow parts on those and turn them from shapes into forms. So there's the cylinder, cube, and cone with all that stuff put together. Then you're putting everything together from all these whole 3 videos. You're putting all of it together into one drawing. And you can do this maybe on a better piece of paper or just use one of these papers. And draw them in an arrangement like this. Maybe use a triangle composition, classical triangle composition with the cone at the top. You can think about doing that. You don't have to. But definitely overlap some of the papers. Now, I hope you watch my overlapping video. You'll know how to do that. Overlap some of these forms, though. That's going to add an interesting part of it. And be sure that the curves on the bottom of the cylinder and the cone are looking correct. Then add a line behind everything for the table. Then put all the different parts of the shadows on it. When you arrange these things, try to think about how can you put a highlight of one object contrasting with the shadow on another object, and that creates an edge instead of a line. See, that's just a line right there, but this is an edge right here. So you're definitely going to want to have edges and instead of lines if you can create those situations. Now, that's what you need to do this week for this week's assignment, and it's going to take some time, and it's going to take a good amount of paper, but I promise you, your son or daughter will, if they go through this and they do this project, and they do all the different parts I suggested, that will definitely bring them to another level on their drawing, okay? And then, once they've achieved that, and they have this information mastered, I have here a book which, you know, it's really taken it to the next level. It's got a lot of great art ideas. It's called Classical Drawing Atelier, A-T-E-L-I-E-R. And that's a fancy word for a special artist's school. And the author's name is Aristides, A-R-I-S-T-I-D-E-S. Again, A-R-I-S-T-I-D-E-S. And I just happened to pick that up and was looking through it, and I purchased a copy. And it's just got, it just takes your drawing to a level of just absolute masterful drawing in there. So anyway, hey, I really am glad that you're getting something out of these videos. This is going to be the most challenging one we've done so far. You know, and if you see this one through, parts 1, 2, and 3, and you do all those activities, doesn't matter if your son or daughter is in 3rd grade or if they're a senior in high school. This will make them better at drawing. Guarantee. This is the solid basic stuff. Anyway, be sure to subscribe and do the likes and leave the comments down there, all the regular YouTube stuff. And you take care. I really appreciate you tuning in, and I hope you really, sincerely hope you get something out of these. You take care. Bye.